Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad here.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Hey, how is everybody doing? And I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. I hope things are going well with you. And, oh, thank you for the subscription there, Gorn ZX. Definitely a nice way to go and start this off. But anyways, as I was saying, hopefully you all had a wonderful weekend. And by the way, welcome everyone to the month of October. And yes, hello to you too, J Monty. Thank you so much for that subscription there as well. But before we go and begin this, there is one thing I immediately want to go and get this out of the way, because I have seen some people not only discussing about this, but also discussing if I would go and talk about it. Something in which that was released last week that got a lot of people excited, but also a lot of people excited if I would go and discuss about it on the podcast. And I'm specifically talking about a certain trailer that came out. And the trailer apparently got pretty popular online. In fact, for the studio that made the movie, it was one of their biggest hits in terms of trailers, gathering like millions of views, and it went viral across the internet. But unfortunately, I have to make the announcement that no, I cannot talk about this trailer. It has nothing to do with the movie itself or the studio behind it or the people behind it or anything whatsoever. It's something that I've already stated again and again and again, and it is mainly because of the strike. And just to go and repeat as to why, in case you guys don't know, technically, if I would go and discuss about the trailer on my podcast, it would legitimately be considered scabbing, because that would actually be considered promoting a project that is made by one of the studios that are against the strike, the studios that are the reason why the actors are currently on strike. And I know that technically the writers are no longer on strike. They have pretty much reached their ending point of the entire strike, but the actors are still on strike. They are still not working at the studios. They are still picketing. They are still fighting for their rights, for both better pay and for job protection as well. So in that regard, as an actor myself, and as someone who does hope one day can join SAG-AFTRA, I stand in solidarity with the strikers, and I don't want to do any actions that would end up becoming like scabbing for the strikers. You know, I don't want to go and set them back with whatever I would do with my videos, rather it be on my main channel or with my podcast. So unfortunately, that is why for months now I've been holding off from talking about any trailers whatsoever. And the only time that I will be talking about trailers will be when the strike is officially over, when SAG-AFTRA strike is officially done, and that the actors and the studios or the AMPTP can negotiate on a deal. That's when I can go back to go and discuss about trailers in the podcast. So again, I am sorry for the inconvenience, and I wish I could go and talk about this, because I know it's been highly discussed on the internet. Some good, well, a lot of which are good, some that are bad, but then again, the grand majority of the ones that are bad are just on Twitter. And well, we know how much Twitter is a hellhole. And I mean, let's be honest, the haters of that trailer are also the same people that threw hate on both Across the Spider-Verse and Mutant Mayhem. So let's be honest, what the fridge do they know about animation? But yeah, unfortunately, I will not be able to go and discuss about the trailer or any trailers until the actor strike is over. All right, so now that I made that clarification, I still want to go and emphasize that we are still going to have a fun-filled episode. I still have like plenty of other stories to go and discuss. Now, this may be a shorter episode than usual. We will only have about 4 stories to go and discuss instead of the usual 5, but we're still gonna have fun with it. So, with that said and done, I would like to go into the chat wall, and now I would like to ask you all, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? Oh, and I do see another subscription. Thank you so much, KS19 Green. And we even got a hype train going on the Twitch stream that I'm on right now. And I see everyone is ready. Hey, this is all great. This is fantastic. What a wonderful start. So now, with all that said and done, it is now time that we shall go and get things started. And with our first story that we have for you today, we will go and discuss about DreamWorks Animation. Now, I know that DreamWorks has been under the weather lately, especially with their latest animated feature, Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, becoming a massive box office bomb. In fact, some people could say it was one of, if not the biggest box office bomb of the summer. Which is honestly pretty unfortunate. I'm personally not a fan of the movie, but I mean, it still doesn't change the fact that what happened to the film and how it got pretty much ignored by almost everyone, it still sucks. Like, you can't help but feel sorry for the feature. But that does not mean that the future of DreamWorks Animation is bleak. They still got some exciting projects that will be coming to us pretty soon. And there is one in particular that got a lot of people's attention. So with that said, let us go and start things off by discussing about a little movie that has been announced called The Wild Robot. Yes, DreamWorks Animation has officially revealed a brand new project called The Wild Robot, an animated feature that will be based on the New York Times best-selling book by Peter Brown. And apparently this is a very popular book to the point that it became a bit of a franchise, or it became a whole book series where they even released some sequels that also got very popular, including The Wild Robot Escapes, and even a brand new book that recently came out called The Wild Robot Protects. And to give you a bit of an idea of what this is going to be about, reading from my source here on the wrap, it says right over here, The Wild Robot follows Rosm 7134, or Roz for short, a futuristic robot that washes ashore on a deserted island. From there, according to the official synopsis, a tale of survival and discovery begins when she becomes the unexpected protector to an orphan gosling, which she names Brightbill. Together, they struggle to survive the harsh environment, but only succeed with the help of a close-knit group of misfit animals, who become first friends, then family. Ultimately, Roz and company save the island from a robotic invasion by Roz's manufacturer, looking to bring her back to civilization by any means necessary. The synopsis says the film tells an emotional story about how we all have the power to exceed our programming, to become more than what we were destined to be. Roz not only finds a way to survive in this dangerous world, but also brings new meaning to her life by taking on the responsibility of parenthood. The movie celebrates what it means to be wild and alive, and how cooperation is the key to survive in a harsh world. But the big reason why this is getting a lot of headlines, why people are really paying attention to The Wild Robot, is not necessarily the factors that would go into it. Like they didn't reveal who is among the cast. They didn't even reveal a release date. But rather, they did say who's going to be the director, and that is none other than Chris Sanders. Yes, the beloved animation veteran who directed many fan-favorite movies such as Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, and The Croods. And on top of that, there are also other people that have been mentioned to be involved, including Jeff Harmon, who's going to be a producer in this, and even Sanders' longtime friend Dean DeBlois, who shall be an executive producer. Other people who are going to be involved with this, reading from my source again on the wrap, it says, joining Sanders on The Wild Robot are production designer Raymond Zibach, a longtime DreamWorks Animation vet. His first movie was the traditionally animated Sinbad Legend of the Seven Seas. Editor Mary Blee, who worked with Sanders on The Croods and How to Train Your Dragon, and the head of story Heidi Jo Gilbert, who most recently worked on the Oscar-nominated Puss in Boots. So again, just a quick reminder, we don't have a release date yet. We don't have an idea of who's going to be among the cast, but what we do know is that we got a brand new movie based on the book by Peter Brown that will be directed by Chris Sanders. Okay, so honestly, this is very interesting, and honestly, it feels like nowadays it's actually very nice to see a lot of hype that's going on for an animated movie that is based on a more original property. Now, I'm not saying this is something that is like 100% original, but on the other hand, it's not necessarily a sequel to something. It's not part of an already established franchise. So with something like this, with The Wild Robot, at least it is something that by Hollywood standards, it would count as something new. And it already feels like DreamWorks is going to be taking this as like a major deal. Like they're really going to be taking this seriously, especially if they're going to be bringing on board Chris Sanders. Now, previously when I talked about the future of DreamWorks Animation, there was something a little bit concerning that they did reveal, especially with the fact that, especially after the results that we have seen from Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, it looks like the big screen would only be reserved for like sequels and already established franchises from DreamWorks Animation. While in terms of original animated movies, like one of them called Orion in the Dark, they would just go and pitch it onto streaming services such as Netflix. So it looks like that may be the case, but I don't know. I feel like with something like The Wild Robot, that may be a movie that DreamWorks is going to be more inclined to go and put out on the big screen, especially if this is going to be something that shall be directed by Chris Sanders. Now, one thing that I will say, and I'm just going to go and get this out of the way, it's a little bit of a criticism. It's just that I feel like the story doesn't necessarily sound that appealing. Like, and I'm only talking about the concept alone. There is a chance that maybe like when we will see more of this coming soon, like when we do see more of the finished product, then like it could probably change my mind. But I don't know. I just feel like with the concept alone, it doesn't necessarily sound that convincing, especially when we got a robot whose main mission now is to go and protect this young little gosling, or this cute little character, and try to make sure that they both survive in this massive, harsh environment. At this point, it's starting to sound more and more like a cliche, especially with the fact that Roz might as well be played by someone like Pedro Pascal, because we've been starting to hear the story again and again and again, like especially now that it has been popularized by The Mandalorian, but then like we've also seen it again with something like The Last of Us, the series The Last of Us, and the reason why I'm saying that it's starting to feel tiring is because, well, now we just heard it again very recently when The Creator just came out, a brand new movie from the director of Rogue One, in which from what I've heard about it, I haven't seen it myself, but a lot of people have said that apparently it looks stunningly beautiful, especially for a movie that only has an $80 million budget, and yet somehow it looks like a $300 million budgeted movie, but the plot line is relatively weak, and especially it sounds like a Mandalorian ripoff where you got Denzel Washington Jr. helping out this little child prodigy or like this little child cyborg prodigy or something like that. It's starting to be at the point where this trope of a story sounds a little bit too familiar. Like now it's starting to be repeated again and again. So at this point, you know, it's not necessarily that appealing to hear that story. So I'm not 100% sure if narratively or written wise, DreamWorks will be able to really pull this off with The Wild Robot. But then again, I could totally be wrong. Maybe they will do something in terms of the execution that could really change things up, that honestly could give us something new with that trope in a way that could really make it engaging. So honestly, that's my only criticism so far with this announcement of the wild robot. And all I'm asking is that hopefully the people at DreamWorks will really find a way to make the most out of that concept, to really show that there can be so much more to that. But with that said, there is one thing that I will say is very exciting, and I can see where all the hype is from, and that is especially the fact that this is a Chris Sanders movie. Now, when it comes to Chris Sanders films, I feel like in terms of the quality of the script with his films, like narratively with the story and building up characters and stuff, they're not always great. I mean, they can definitely be good, like with Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, but they're never often like the best of the best, you know? Like Chris Sanders' biggest strength is not necessarily in terms of the writing or what is in the script or even in the storytelling, but the animation, on the other hand. That is one thing I am most excited for, and one thing that I know is going to work out so beautifully with this is in terms of the visuals. And I know, like, when you bring someone like Chris Sanders on board, oh man, is he going to deliver on the visuals. In fact, I would even say with DreamWorks Animation, some of the best visuals that they have produced were from Chris Sanders films, like How to Train Your Dragon, or I would even include The Croods. I'm not that big of a fan of those movies, but visually, they are absolutely stunning. And that is especially with how they would go and translate Chris Sanders' creativity and his art style and bringing it to life onto CG. And imagine what they can do with the wild robot. Imagine what they can do with the designs of the robots themselves, but especially with the island, with the environment itself. Like, that is one thing I am really hyped up for, to see all that creativity, to see the beautiful visuals that they can go and create. So at the very least, I am a bit unsure with how the story is going to go, but I know that it will visually be spectacular, and that is one thing to go and really be hyped up for. So overall, like, weighing in on both the pros and the cons, I will say that this is something that I'm not going to be really hyped up for, but I will be keeping an eye out on. You know, I will be like cautiously anticipating for this one. I don't know if this is going to be like the best animated movie of the year whenever this is going to be released, because again, we don't necessarily have a release date as of yet. But I know this is going to be something in which it will deliver on certain aspects. This is going to be the kind of movie which I could tell that when it's going to be good, like when there are some parts that are good, those parts are just going to be absolutely amazing. So overall, yeah, I like I said, I'm just going to keep an eye on it. I will be intrigued with what they have in store, and hopefully with the parts that I am a bit more cynical or that I am criticizing, DreamWorks can go and prove me wrong, and that they will definitely surprise me with the storytelling and give us something absolutely incredible. So yeah, honestly, I'll definitely be, again, I'll be keeping an eye out on this one. All right, so with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all, what do you think about the wild robot? Are you guys excited for this movie to be released? Are you really hyped up? Or do you have any concerns with this feature? Let me know what you all think on this. Oh boy. No. All right, come on now. Just need to get all that out of my system. Excuse me, folks. All right, let's see now. This definitely sounds like it has a lot of potential. While I admit the concept does sound cliche, but maybe the execution could work, and I am super excited to have Chris Sanders involved, especially as a huge fan of Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. So overall, I'm very excited for this. Also, on a side note, happy early birthday, AniMat's. Oh, thank you, yes. I mean, my birthday is on October 5th, so I know this week I will be taking a bit of a break because I know there will be plenty of celebrations. that I'll have with family and friends. So just I'll say right now, thank you all for the early birthday message. But anyways, I haven't read the book, so I wouldn't know much about Roz and the gang. But making it a Chris Sanders movie, that's it, I'm sold. The story itself sounds a little generic, but DreamWorks hasn't steered us wrong with non-businessmen baby-related book adaptations, so I'm gonna keep an eye out on this. I mean, it's a Chris Sanders movie. How could he ruin it with a creepy CGI dog? Well, I mean, technically there's going to be like a little duck, and they say there's going to be a bunch of different animals, so who the fridge knows? And again, it is DreamWorks Animation, so you never know what celebrities they're going to somehow slap onto them. Like, like who knows? Maybe somehow there's going to be like a Chris Rock cat, you know, suddenly like just barging in and he'll make some random quips. I mean, like, I know it sounds weird, but like at the very least, maybe like that would be the perfect opportunity for a Chris Rock cat to actually say something more than what he did in Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie. Because I'll say right now, I have seen the movie, and it's like laughably embarrassing the amount of lines that Chris Rock has. Like, if you have seen the trailer, then you've heard everything that Chris Rock said in that entire movie. I'm just saying. All right, let's see. This sounds like a really cool movie idea. I'm hoping it's a little closer to the book, if only for the sake of book fans. How to Train Your Dragon will probably never have an accurate book adaptation because of the DreamWorks movie, so yeah. I can see why it might not sound appealing to you, but I trust the director to make a really sweet, warm movie. Maybe emphasizing a wildness on the robot like Stitch. I mean, sure, yeah. Like, you do bring up a very good point that technically when it comes to adaptations of DreamWorks Animation, or I would even argue the grand majority of animated movies out there nowadays, whenever they would do an adaptation of a book, it's never accurate. Like, if you're hoping something that stays true to the book, don't look at major studios doing so, because they'll just throw it out and just do whatever they want. It's pretty much the same mentality that Walt Disney asked his writers to just go and say, hey, you know about the Jungle Book? Yeah, what I want you to do, don't read that. Now go make a movie about Jungle Book. I mean, that is the true story. That's how Walt Disney told his filmmakers to go and make the Jungle Book. Okay, anyways, what else do we have here? The man, the legend, and one of my favorite people, Chris Sanders, has returned to bring us something potentially awesome. I do think this has potential to be something good and make that cliche refreshing. This man is such a gem to talk to. I met him not once but twice last year when I attended Lightbox Expo and Design Con. Whatever he does, I'm officially in. Hey, that's nice to hear, you know? You know, I could always count on Jonathan to go and explain to us, like, he's so far had met so many celebrities. It's like, are they a good person? Go ask John. They'll probably know. All right, what other comments do we have here? While the synopsis of The Wild Robot does touch on multiple familiar story beats, like Castaway, Mandalorian, and even WALL-E, I have faith that Chris Sanders is capable of breathing life into it and make it feel fresh and engaging. The same way he did for How to Train Your Dragon, I am a firm advocate for cinemas not to be reserved only for sequels, remakes, franchises, entities. One recent animated movie I was lucky enough to catch a screening for was The Inventor, which was a delight. Honestly, I wish I could go and watch it. I think it only came out in US theaters. I don't know if it really did come out in Canada, but I really want to see that, especially with the fact that technically I did back up the Kickstarter of it. I did made a pledge. I did support it, and you would actually go and see my credits among all the other Kickstarter people. Honestly, I really want to see The Adventure, and I hope one day that I get to do so. Especially, like, I mean, I literally put my money on it, so I want to see this movie, and it's great to hear that, like, apparently it's actually a really enjoyable film. So honestly, it adds up to my anticipation. All right, let's see. It's nice to see Chris Sanders return to DreamWorks Animation to make another animated movie since The Croods. You can't count Call of the Wild since that one was live action. While the concept sounds familiar and it looks like The Mandalorian and The Last of Us combined into two, but let's just hope the execution works out great. By the way, did you get a cut from shaving on your neck? Honestly, yeah. Yeah, like like I ended up shaving. I got a bit of a cut and it bled more than usual, so that's why I had to put in a bandage here. But hey, I mean, like, take a look. It's actually pretty cool. Like I did use a Mickey a Mickey band-aid, so I mean, it fits. You know, it works out. So yeah, don't worry. I'm definitely fine. I mean, like, if if it was problematic, I wouldn't be doing this podcast episode in the first place. All right, let's see. I'll read two more comments and then we're going to go on our first break. Let's see. Well, it depends on the concept. I could see it as well as being cliche, except with me, it's more like an alternate plot line of the Iron Giant and the Mandalorian. However, not going in full doubt to know if this will be a bad film, I still believe DreamWorks is really started to get their groove back together after The Bad Guys and Puss in Boots 2. And with Chris being on board, this might actually be a pleasant film to see. It might turn out to be an interesting film if they play their cards right. Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. All right, let's see here. I've never read any of the I've never read any of the books, but after hearing that Chris Sanders is going to be directing this movie, I'm pretty optimistic about it. The story is no big surprise as it uses some cliches, but who knows? Maybe I could be wrong and they can make it awesome. And I'm definitely hyped for what the animation can be. I'll keep an eye out on the Wild Robot. Throughout the weekend, I met Bill Farmer and Daniel Ross and I got to see the Sphere in Vegas. Whoa, that is awesome, dude. All right, so with that said, I think it is now time that we will go on to our first break. And when we do come back, we will have a significant update on the strike in which we will be talking about the details of what is it that the writers got. And the answer to that is everything. It's like a dream come true for them. All right, welcome back. Now, for our next story over here, we got a massive update in terms of the strike. Now, as you may recall, in the last episode, I have delivered, well, I didn't personally deliver the update, but last time we have talked about the big moment in which writers and studios have actually, oh, excuse me, folks. Okay, anyways, last time we have discussed about how writers and studios have made a significant deal, a deal in which they have agreed upon to go and end the strike, and that the writers can actually have some better compensation in their contracts. So, but I just want to go and make a big clarification right now that technically the strike is not officially over, and it's not at the point where it's like everybody can go and immediately get back to work. I got my source here on The Hollywood Reporter just giving us an update on what is currently going on with the strike. So just to go and quickly read you here, it states, as the negotiators noted, the end of the strike doesn't mean that the tentative agreement the union reached with studios and streamers Sunday night is a sure thing. Union members still need to vote to ratify the contract. A referendum that union leadership announced on Tuesday will take place between October 2nd and October 9th. Members are also being asked to attend informational meetings on the new deal that will take place in New York, Los Angeles, and on Zoom in the coming days. There, leaders will undoubtedly look to sell the deal to members and argue that the union's grueling work stoppage gave it the necessary leverage to pry these conditions for major industry employees. So technically, yes, the writer's strike is officially done, but not everything is set in stone as of yet. So technically they did get their new contract, but not everything is like purely official right now. But the big question is, what is it that they have gotten? You know, what is it that the writers have now received in their new contract? Well, we are going to go and look into them one by one over here. So I got my source here on WGAcontract2023.org, where it went and summarized all the things that the new deal has featured and what is it that the writers are going to receive. And we're going to go and look into them one by one. So first of all, the terms of agreement, they said that this is going to be the contract that will go from September 25th of 2023 all the way up to May 1st of 2026. And the stuff that they will also include will have minimum increases, in which it says, reading from my source on WGAcontract2023.org, most NBA minimums will increase by 5% on ratification of the contract, 4% on May 2nd, 2024, and 3.5% on May 2nd, 2025. Some minimums and rate increase less, mostly by 3% each year, while a few rates increase only once or do not increase over the contract. So maybe not all of them, but there is a significant portion in which they will see minimums be increased. Then they also mentioned about increased health and pension contribution rates, in which it will be going up from 11.5% to 12%, but especially they will go and increase those contributions to writing teams, where it says that each writer on a writing team employed for a script will receive pension and health contributions up to the relevant cap as though they were a single writer, rather than splitting the application cap. In addition, when a writing team is employed on a series, the contribution for each writer to the team will be made on the full weekly minimum instead of 1/2 of the weekly minimum. So at first, it may not seem much of the increase going from 11.5 to 12%, but especially for those in writing teams, that is a massive deal, because it used to be completely split, where imagine if you would have like a team of 4 writers all together, and they would have to go and split that into 4, where they would end up with 3% each. So in that regard, imagine going from 3% to 12%. That is a massive deal right there. Then they also discuss about artificial intelligence, and I'm going to save that one for last, by the way, because this I find to be the biggest one of them all. Then you also got improved terms of screenwriter employment, which will include guaranteed second step, accelerated payment structure for flat deals, and streaming features. Then they also discuss about improved terms in high-budget subscription video on demand, which will include increased foreign streaming residuals, viewership-based streaming bonus, streaming data transparency, and premium for pilot and backup scripts. And this is considered to be one of the major ones. This is considered to be one of the biggest deals over here, because now, for the first time, writers can actually get streaming residuals. That I know some people could argue that technically these kinds of deals have already existed in other countries such as Europe, but this is a massive deal because now streaming platforms are going to become a lot more transparent when it comes to their numbers, so that they could go and accurately give their lion's share to the writers. And especially with the fact that now they can legitimately get streaming residuals and viewership-based streaming bonuses, that's going to be massive, considering how streaming can debatably be more popular than movies released on the big screen. So that's going to be some major payments that they will be seeing over here. Then following afterwards, they also talked about minimum terms of advertising supported streaming, which was then followed by increased compensation for series employment, weekly pay, and staff writer script fees, to which they narrowed down like the weekly pay increases, as well as writer producer weekly rates, to which they went over here and they said that for those that go up to 9 weeks for their employment, they would get a payment of over $11,000. Then for those there for like 10 to 19 weeks, and by the way, these are all weekly minimums, by the way, this is per week. 10 to 19 weeks, they would have a payment of nearly $9,500. And for 20 weeks and over, they would get a payment of $8,500 per week. Then there are also those like in terms of development room premiums, in which staff writers would be paid nearly $7,000, story editors would get nearly $13,000, and writer producers would get over $14,000, and that is development room premium rates up to 19 weeks, as well as also getting staff writer script fees. Then following afterwards, you also got staffing and duration provisions for episodic series. So there's also a bit of an update for payments for those creating episodes, which includes payments for development rooms and post greenlit rooms. Or actually, this is not necessarily in terms of payments. This is actually more in terms of the amount of people that are going to be involved, in which now there is going to be a required minimum of who can actually be in there, depending on how many episodes are made. So for all of them, by the way, they would need a minimum of 3 writers producers in the writing room. But if you're going to make an episode that has 6 episodes or less, you need a minimum of 3 writers. If you're going to have 7 to 12 episodes, you need a minimum of 5 writers. And for 13 episodes and over, you need a minimum of 6 writers. And they even mentioned some additional stuff, such as writers in production. Then following afterwards, we also got improved options, exclusivity, and span protection. Then afterwards, we also got an Appendix A series made for subscription streaming services. Then they also got a new deal with showrunner training program, additional arbitrations, tri-guild audit programs, and also some other notable changes as well. But then let's go back to what I promised to be the last one, artificial intelligence. And oh man, this is, just like with the streaming residuals, this one is also another massive deal. Let's go down one by one onto these things. So in terms of the artificial intelligence deal, it says, first off, AI cannot write or rewrite literacy material. And AI-generated material will not be considered source material under the MBA, meaning that AI-generated materials cannot be used to undermine a writer's credit or separate rights. Now, this right here is a massive, or I would even say a critical blow to AI, because now AI itself cannot be credited as a writer. Like AI cannot do the job of a writer, and also materials created by AI cannot be used to go and turn into a project like a series or a movie. Like already the prospects of AI writing just got completely stonewalled right over there, in which the tool itself cannot be used to go and create full scripts, and they cannot be used to create books that would go on to become bigger franchises. Like whatever AI books are out there, they can only remain as that, as books. So this is not only something that is a critical blow in the, to AI in the entertainment industry, but this is also a critical blow to AI in writing in general, including publications and stuff like that. So already that is a major one, in which it pretty much says that only writers can go and write the stuff. Then following afterwards, it says, a writer can choose to use AI when performing writing services if the company consents and provided that the writer follows applicable company policies, but the company cannot require the writer to use AI software when performing writing services. Now, this pretty much turns the writers into the gatekeepers of AI writing. Technically, they are allowed to go and use AI in order to go and create their scripts. If they want to do that, that is their choice. That is their option to do so. However, studios and executives are not allowed to tell them to use AI in order to go and create their scripts. That is not their choice whatsoever. It's all up to the writers, considering that the technology would go and threaten the writers' jobs. Then at that point, it's the writer's decision to go and decide if they want to actually use the technology to go and create their scripts. I mean, the writers have already proven that they got the talent to be a part of the Writers Guild of America, so they will have the choice to see if it would be applicable, if they necessarily need to have AI to go and help out with their jobs. So that's another major thing, that it's only writers who can have a say if the technology can be used or not. Then there's also the company must disclose to the writer if any materials given to the writer has been generated by AI or incorporate AI generated material. So with this one, this is pretty much if with transparency. This is in regards to the fact that now the companies have to be really open to go and say like, hey, this thing was touched upon by AI. Can you go and switch things up or something like that? You know, they have to go and like openly admit if they are using scripts that have been dabbled upon with AI. So that's another major thing. It's in regards to transparency. It's the same thing with what we have just discussed with the residuals for streaming, that now studios have to be a lot more open in terms of the numbers so that they could be more honest with the writers. And it's the same thing with AI. They got to be honest if AI has been touched upon with those scripts. And then finally, last but certainly not least, the WGA reserves the right to assert that exploitation of writers' material to train AI is prohibited by the NBA or other law. So with this one right over here, this is something that really limits the technology. This is something that would go and take AI writing, and now it cannot necessarily further it to go and actually train to properly write scripts, because there have been some people who would go and play around with AI to see if they can go and actually create a script just by writing a few simple words. Like they would go and say, I want to make a movie that has a bunch of cavemen, dragons, and Stitch like aliens. I don't know why I used a full-on Chris Sanders example. I guess my mind is still in the Wild Robot. But anyways, yeah, I want to have all these things, but I want the script to be in the style of the Wachowski sisters. And then they would go and create an entire script that would have dragons, cavemen, and Stitch like aliens in the style of movies like The Matrix or Speed Racer and stuff like that. But now with something like this, they are not allowed to do so. Now, writers under the WGA, they are completely protected so that their materials cannot be duplicated by AI. Their works cannot go and be fed onto the machine so that they can go and develop those kinds of scripts. So their jobs are pretty much protected to where AI is incapable of replacing those writers. Like if you want to get the writing style to be just like that, then you have to hire that specific writer instead of getting AI to do so, because AI will no longer have the capabilities to emulate that style, because now they are fully restricted to do so. And this I find over here with all that is like, this is really the job security that writers have been looking for. This is really what they needed. And that, yeah, I would say that the days of using artificial intelligence to help out with writing, it's starting to be numbered. Like right now, it just got stonewalled where it doesn't seem like it's going to be useful anymore in the entertainment industry, and even in the publication industry. There's not going to be much profit that they can go and find. So overall with this deal, yeah, like as you could see, they pretty much got everything they wish for, especially in terms of protection from AI, from the increased health pension contributions to streaming residuals, and many more. They got all that they asked. And this really is a prominent example as to why strikes are vital. This is the power of unions. This is the power of strikes. You know, and keep in mind, like they were striking for nearly 150 days, and this is exactly what they have been fighting for. These are all the things that they have been demanding from studio executives, and they even had to go and strike out. They legit had to fight against studios in order to ensure that they get what they wanted. And honestly, I find this to be beautiful, and I feel like this could be the start of something wonderful. And who knows, maybe we will see more of this in the entertainment industry, as we see not just in terms of like the other strikes that are going on, especially with the SAG-AFTRA strike, but with other guilds as well, especially with the Animation Guild, when they're going to have to renegotiate with their contracts for 2024. If they want to go and avoid and dodge, they want to, if studios want to dodge another strike, but with them, then they would have to go and start making negotiations, because now animators, they have gotten the knowledge, they have witnessed what they have seen with the writers and the actors, and they can go and emulate the same thing in order to get what they also want, in order to have better working conditions, job protection from AI, better payment, so that they can legitimately have a livable wage, and many more. So this is honestly such a wonderful thing to see, and I want to say congratulations to all the writers who have been striking for so long. I know that it was a pretty intense summer that you all had, but it is great to see now that it is all worth it, that your future is bright, that you no longer have to worry about things like putting food on the, maybe like there is still a bit of that obstacle, like you still have to keep finding job, like gig after gig after gig, but at the very least, you no longer have to worry about the future of your job. You're not going to be replaced, and being a writer is starting to become more and more valid as a legitimate job. So it's great to see, and I'm hoping that we will see more people in the entertainment industry getting similar deals such as this. And not only that, but even with other strikers as well outside of the entertainment industry. Like, I know that there are car manufacturers that are also on strike. So hopefully this will be the inspiration for unions to go and keep on fighting until they win, because this is a battle that is indeed possible, that you can get what you want, and the better, so that everyone can have better working conditions. All right, so with that said, now I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask you all, how do you feel about the contract? Oh, what the fridge? Wait a minute. Hold on a sec. Sorry about that, folks. For some reason, I just saw like a weird ad. Like suddenly Twitch is just telling me, all right, let's just go and put up an ad suddenly. Like I didn't do a single thing, but Twitch decided like, all right, let's go and put an ad over here. I don't know. I just need to double check on that. That's just, that was just a little bit strange. I'm sorry about that, folks. It's Twitch being a little bit weird. Like I need to double check on that as well. Anyways, back to what we are talking about. Yes, I am fine. Don't worry. Let's see. This is a great deal that the WGA got out of. Every detail of the new contract includes the use of AI, helps to ensure that the writers can be safe, and even though they didn't get everything, they got what they wanted. All that is left is for the actors to get the same deal as the writers got, as they are now negotiating with the studios today to get their deal. So let's root for the actors to win that deal. Oh yeah, I mean, best case scenario, who knows? Maybe next week we will actually be talking about a new deal between SAG-AFTRA and the studios, and we'll see the potential end of all the strikes that are happening in the entertainment industry. That would be great. Anyways, AI is officially out of the scene, no pun intended, and thank God. I'm absolutely glad the WGA strike are officially over, and do hope SAG-AFTRA will soon get into negotiations soon with the major studios to find the deal just as good as the WGA deal. Let's keep supporting them, folks, and also help the Animation Guild as well next year. Oh, that'll be another fight when that time comes. All right, let's see. Apparently I've been noted that Twitch apparently has done a lot of changes to ads. Yeah, that will definitely explain something. Oh boy. I mean, like, I know the ads are the things that's making me, that's, well, not making me a lot of money, but it's making me some money. But still, though, it's like, it's always a hassle, you know what I mean? Sometimes I do wish, like, instead of ads, like, I would be sponsored by someone so that, like, I can keep this show going. That would be great. Anyways, This sounds amazing. However, I am curious about streaming residuals and whether the studios will actually be transparent. Like, isn't the Disney investor lawsuit still going on, or has that been settled or held off? I think transparency on viewership numbers need to be known for everyone, not just within the workforce. Honestly, I am worried that studios will just take content down just to prevent writers from getting residuals. There's got to be a way to prevent from needless takedowns. I mean, from what I could tell, it looks like those lawsuits are still going on against Disney. And I don't know how it's going to work with, like, in terms of content that's just being taken down. I mean, for now, we're just going to take one step at a time, and like, let's just take the victories for when we have. I mean, like, it's great that we even have this deal in the first place. So let's be thankful for that. And I mean, when it arises that we will see some like critical problems, then like we will bring this up. Let's see. Needless to say, writers 100% won this contract. I mean, fair payment for their work, job security, and protection from AI. These are all massive W's, and I'm so glad the writers are being given the retribution they deserve. Plus, I'm glad a certain Twitter critic no longer has an excuse to say, this was written by ChatGPT. You know who I'm talking about, unless you don't, in which case it's a long story. Well, to be honest, I really don't, because I rarely interact on Twitter anyways. As you probably know, I've been training myself less and less to be using Twitch on a regular basis, and I'm more active on Blue Sky and on Facebook. Yes, I am still on Twitter, in which I would call out stupid nonsense that would be happening, or I would go and like promote my work, or I would share some of the posts done by voice actress Kat Cressida. But honestly, in terms of like whatever stupidity is going on Twitch or on Twitter, honestly, I don't know and I don't care. You know, that's why I haven't honestly seen much of the criticism. That's why I've seen very little criticism towards the Wish trailer, because I know that the majority of those are from Twitter, and really, who the fridge cares of what cynical Twitter users would say? Let's see what else we got here. What other comments would there be? After having been on strike for so long, the writers have finally got their reward, and man, oh, for God's sakes. Fudge nabbit, it's been happening again. I don't know, like, it just popped up once again where they say like, oh, we're gonna be having ads again. It's like, could you please shut up? It's not time. For God's sakes, I thought I set a timer, but I need to go and check on the options. Seriously, it's just a little bit annoying. But anyways, as I was saying, after having been on strike for so long, the writers have finally got their reward, and man, what a reward it is. Not only do we see massive boosts in pay, but also some great protection with both job security and no usage of AI. Now let's see what the studios can come up with now that the strikes are over, and they announced a reboot of The Office. Yeah, I did hear about that. God, that's why? I thought we're done with that whole thing, you know? I just talked about it on Animation Look Back the Muppets about that kind of trope and stuff like that. I thought we've all moved on from it, honestly. Why do we need another Office, okay? We've moved on from The Office. The Office is done. Why reboot that? No. All right, I'm going to read one more comment before we move on to our next break. I think it's safe to say that this is a huge win for the WGA. The fact that they got everything they wanted is an achievement, and it is safe to say that the strike has paid off in the long run, and I definitely hope that SAG-AFTRA can get a fair deal as well, especially since they are meeting right now, and hopefully we will see that strike end sooner rather than later. Of course. All right, so now we will go and have our break, and now Twitch can go and play their stupid little ads, and when we do come back, we will be discussing about something that I know time flies very quickly, but we will have to go and talk about something that is coming soon, and that is award season. And there's going to be one major update in terms of one of the award shows, so stay tuned for that. All right, so Now we are back, and we will be discussing about something that is unfortunately coming very soon, which is award season. I mean, keep in mind, folks, we just started October, and that means that pretty soon, that's when all the awards are suddenly going to barge in, and then we'll be talking about all the different stuff like the Oscars, the Golden Globes, the Annies, and the Critics' Choice Awards, and all that kind of hoopla. But it looks like when it comes to one of them, specifically the Golden Globe Awards, they decided to go and spice things up a little bit. Apparently, they decided to go and do something a little bit new. They decided to go and change things up. Well, maybe not change things up, but add some new stuff in order to go and give more representation to movies and different projects out there. So we will go and look at them one by one with the two new categories that the Golden Globes has created. So the first one that they have done is called Best Performance in Stand-Up Comedy on Television, also known as Best Stand-Up Comedian on Television. By the way, I'm reading from my source here on Variety. It says this new documentary gives stand-ups a dedicated award for an individual performance or as part of a comedy group ensemble. The eligibility is that traditional stand-up comedy performances of at least 30 minutes, other than roles in television series, limited series, anthology series, or motion pictures made for television, are eligible for this award. Television includes works related by broadcast, basic and premium cable, streaming, and pay-per-view cable. To be eligible for Golden Globe Awards, television programs must be released on a recognized media platform. Individual social media accounts do not qualify. Other programs, only programs first aired or made available for viewing on demand in the United States during the qualifying calendar year are eligible. And finally, a total of 6 nominees will be named for this category. Now, this one, I will admit, I feel like I'm a little bit mixed. Now, this one, I will say, like, I could see both the pros and cons. Because on one hand, I do get it, you know, I could see the great potential about having comedians be represented in here, you know, like why not have a moment to actually highlight stand-up comedians for their work on what they would do. You know, it's nice to see like you add a bit of variety in terms of different performers getting recognized for big award shows such as the Golden Globes. Okay, in that regard, I get it. That's fine. That's pretty cool. And it will give comedians an extra incense for them to feel extra motivated to make some like really great material to, you know, get, you know, to provide some amazing specials so that maybe they can have like a Golden Globe winning stand-up special. Like they are hoping for that. But on the other hand, though, I could see this be a little bit controversial. Like, I could imagine this is like a quick and easy way to go and stir up drama, considering that there are some controversial comedians out there who are still getting like big name specials and that they would still be getting like big sellout tours and all that kind of stuff. You know, there are some there are like not all of them, of course, but there are some recognizable names that would often get into trouble and are not viewed positively by the public. And the reason why I bring this up is mainly because of the Grammy Awards, and often they would get into trouble because they also got their own best stand-up comedian category, and often they would nominate some very controversial names and even some names that have been faced with some massive backlash and have been caught doing some very dangerous acts. Like, not only would they nominate people like Dave Chappelle or even Louis C.K., but they would even end up winning some Grammy Awards. So that could be one of the downsides with what the Golden Globes is going to do here. So honestly, I don't know if it's something like if the Golden Globes decided to create this for the purpose of trying to stir up drama and to have people talk about the Golden Globes more, because, you know, the old saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. But that's how I feel with this category. I'm just honestly a little bit mixed, where you do see a bit of pros and you do see a bit of cons. It's like, on one hand, I can see a lot of problems with the existence of this category, but at the same time, I am not completely opposed to this category whatsoever. You know, like, I am okay with it existing, and I do get it, but at the same time, hopefully the Golden Globes will go and manage things well so that it doesn't like explode, or there would like it would end up causing more trouble than there would be. But then there is the other category, and this is the one that honestly I really want to go and discuss about. And that is in regards to their new movie category called Cinematic and Box Office Achievement. The Cinematic and Box Office Achievement includes nominees from the year's most acclaimed, highest earning, and or most viewed films that have garnered extensive global audiences' support and attained cinematic excellence. The eligibility for it includes motion pictures are eligible for the Cinematic and Box Office Achievement Award if they have achieved a box office receipt total gross of $150 million, of which 100 must come from the U.S. domestic box office and or obtain a commensurate digital streaming viewership recognized by trusted industry sources. Films that are released after November 22nd up until the end of the year may qualify based on projected box office performance and or digital streaming view from trusted industry sources. Cinematic and Box Office Achievement contenders can also be considered for Best Motion Picture in their respective categories, such as drama, comedy or musical, animation, and non-English language if they meet the eligibility requirements for each of those awards. Box office and streaming views will determine eligibility. Once a film meets the box office related qualifying criteria or streaming criteria, Golden Globe voters will determine the nominees and winners based on excellence. And finally, a total of 8 nominees will be named for this category. Now, I just want to go and say right here that honestly, if you're going to go and create brand new categories, try to go and develop something new that would go and highlight something that is underrepresented, or at least usually underrepresented during these award shows. And a lot of different categories have been brought up over time. Like, some people would bring up the idea, like one that animation fans have been demanding for years is a category for best voice acting. You know, best voice acting, rather it be for an animated series. Like, I know the Emmys have already done that, but like something like the Golden Globes can go and include a best voice acting for an animated series, or that the Golden Globes and the Oscars would do best voice acting in an animated feature, or just voice acting in general. So that, you know, that is often one that has been heavily demanded. And then other ones that many people have asked and, demanded that there could be a possibility could actually come to life at the Oscars is for best stunt performance. That is another one that some people have been asking for. And then another one that like I thought about, one that would be really nice is best independent film. You know, it would be nice to see if they would go and actually create a best independent feature where they would go and nominate movies that are not from the major studios, like the best movies outside of companies like Disney, Sony, Universal, Paramount, Warner Brothers, and all that kind of stuff. You know, that would also be another category that would actually be great. But this one right over here, this has got to be the most corporately manufactured category I have ever heard. Like, basically, you're going for best blockbuster. You're going for the movies that would already have so much rewards, like already so much rewards from the box office alone. And now you want to go and give it even more reward by trying to create a category just for them. Like, honestly, this feels like the kind that is just made so that the popular movies would be nominated. In fact, that's what this category should actually be called, Best Popular Movie, because they are aware that some people might get upset if like the popular movies that they know wouldn't get nominated. Like, there are many people out there who would only watch like the ones that are extremely popular, and they would only watch a handful of movies that have made like tons of money at the box office already. Like, for example, Barbie. Like, chances are, like, there are going to be people who would be upset if Barbie didn't win any of like the big Golden Globe Awards, like if it didn't win like best writing or best picture and all that kind of stuff. But then you would go and create this category that would feel like it would be made especially for them. It's like a response like last year where like if people got upset that Everything Everywhere All at Once ended up being the big winner, but they so desperately wanted to have Avatar to become the big box office winner, so they would go and create that category especially for them. It's just like a desperate crowd pleaser of a category that honestly it just feels dumb. And I just realized very recently that there is a massive flaw with this category, and that is regarding this one right over here, that films that are released after November 22nd up until the end of the year may qualify based on projected box office performance and or digital streaming views from trusted industry sources. Now, this one, I feel, originally I would think like, okay, this one doesn't necessarily seem to be so bad, because with that one, like, okay, like if you're going with the projected box office, then all right, like I could see how that can work. But the thing is though, is that often projections are not always accurate. There are times when they can be wrong. And there is one movie that made me realize this massive flaw, and that is Elemental. Like, okay, let's imagine this scenario right over here. Let's say that Wish ended up getting the same box office performance as Elemental, where its box office opening was a massive disaster, and you see so many people on the internet repeating the same mistake that they did with Elemental, where they said that Disney is doomed, Disney has another box office bomb, Wish is a massive failure, and all that kind of stuff. But then over time, like once you enter into 2024 and stuff like that, then you suddenly see that Wish would get more and more money to the point where it managed to turn a profit, and it turned into a major box office hit. So at that point, like when it would be, so like imagine like it started out with a weak opening, and then you would have this going on. Like with this cinematic box office achievement, like technically some people would go and say that because of the projection, it looks like they would say that it looks like things are going to be going down with it. Then at that point, like Wish would no longer be eligible for it because of wrong projections, because of the fact that at the time it wasn't able to go and be qualified, when later on it would definitely be more than qualified. So that is also another scenario in which it would be such a massive issue. It's honestly ridiculous, and especially with the fact that it is a massive crowd pleaser because of the fact that they're going to be nominating 8 movies in this. So they want to go and cram in as many of the big name titles because they know for a fact that there are plenty of them out there that they wouldn't even bother to go and nominate, like this is just for the sake of trying to go and include movies such as the Super Mario movie or Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, movies in which they know that wouldn't ever get nominated in all the other categories, but they definitely would do so in something like this because they made a crap ton of money at the box office. So really, and I've seen people making this comparison. It's very much similar to what the Oscars pulled off a couple of years ago when they wanted to do like an audience vote on their favorite movie, which that turned out to be such a massive disaster. Like it was such a failure that they tried to do so one year and then like it never happened again. Like, it was just an absolute joke. And not to mention that there have been people who have just been really abusing the system. I think there was one that like fans were so desperate to try to push because I forgot of like what might be the reason though. I feel like there was one movie in which like fans were desperately trying to say like they should be the winner, they should be the winner, but like I don't know what happened, but it was just like the whole situation. Or oh, I know what it is, because it was something that had Johnny Depp in it. I think it was like, I forgot what the movie is, but it was something related to Johnny Depp, and they were desperately trying to push that to become like the big winner, which I think it may ended up like, I think like it reached like the top numbers. But it was just so ridiculous. But like all that turned out to be like an embarrassment. It was so poorly handled, and like they rightfully bailed out from that idea. And I feel like that is exactly what happened. Oh, like this is what's going to happen. Like this is just a desperate attempt in order to get people watching the Golden Globes to say, hey, we nominated your favorite movie over here. Or it's basically made for the purpose to go and get, to give the illusion that other movies would go and get like more nominations. Like another example is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I'm just gonna go and say this right now. The Golden Globes and the Oscars and stuff like that, they're only going to give it one nomination just for Best Animated Feature, and that's it. But now with the Golden Globes creating this, there is now a possibility that Spider-Verse is only going to get 2 nominations for Best Animated Feature and for Cinematic and Box Office Achievement. They're going to go and do that. So overall, I just feel like this is just dumb. Like, I feel like this is something that is, this is a decision made in order to boost up the ratings than it actually is to go and create a solid, to create a good category, to go and give stronger representation to underappreciated artists. Or this is something that like, it's not really helpful for anyone. This is only helpful for like marketing reasons. It's just for the marketing of the movies that were nominated, to just say that they were Golden Globe nominated or that they were Golden Globe winners, or that it's just marketing for the Golden Globes so that they can go and nominate more popular movies. This is just like, this thing just feels like a massive waste. And again, it just feels massively corporately manufactured. It's honestly something that's just dumb. So yeah, honestly, this is just another example of why I'm not necessarily taking the Golden Globes so seriously. And I don't think something like this is really going to go and help out. But just to let you all know that we could be hearing the nominations pretty soon in the next month or two, because the Golden Globes will be airing on January 7th. So just to let you know on that. All right, so with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I want to ask you all, how do you feel about the 2 new categories, about best stand-up in television and best blockbuster feature? I would love to know your thoughts on all that. All right, let's see here. Dedicating a category to best stand-up comedian, I can understand that, though the Golden Globes' motivation for it is another matter. But best box office winner? Worst idea ever. In no small part because it doesn't recognize achievement based on the talent and efforts, but rather are just chasing popularity like they were back in middle school. This only cements my opinion as to why all these award shows have lost any and all value that they may have once had. All right, let's see. Honestly, this is a terrible idea. The fact that the Golden Globes are trying to create a popular film category so they can nominate bigger movies is embarrassing, and it kind of proves how the Golden Globes doesn't even know what it's doing anymore. I never thought I would say this, but the Kids' Choice Awards have more dignity than the Golden Globes. At least the Kids' Choice Awards knows what it wants to be. Yeah, you do bring up a good point. You know, I don't give a crap about the Kids' Choice Awards whatsoever, but at least they are self-aware. At least they know their stance in award shows, and that, let's be honest, like, people under 12 do not, people over 12 years old do not take this seriously whatsoever. So yeah, honestly, it's just, it really is at that embarrassing point where, like, the Golden Globes are trying to make themselves look as more seriously than they actually are. Let's see, what else do we have here? Those two categories that the Golden Globes added feel like it would backfire. For stand-up comedian performance, that's considered necessary, but for box office achievements, that feels discriminatory against blockbusters to either boost up ratings or shows that they dislike blockbuster movies. If they go through with it, then this will backfire, as I only see Barbie, Oppenheimer, and Spider-Verse getting in the most due to critical acclaim, but this is dumb. Hope Sound of Freedom is not nominated. Oh my god, yeah, like, I don't think you'll ever see Sound of Freedom getting nominated. I don't know if the Golden Globes would want to really get into that amount of trouble. Like, really, that's just, you know, like, if you're going to be nominating Sound of Freedom, that's just demanding for backlash. Like, that's when you are really, like, tripling down on there's no such thing as bad publicity. It's like, if you nominate Sound of Freedom, then you know what you're doing, and you're just desperate to have people talking more and more about Sound of Freedom. So I'm just saying right now, like, are the Golden Globes that stupid to go and nominate that worthless movie? Who knows? Let's see now. Dick Clark Productions, the people behind the Globes, want to add two things. Why not Best Television Series Animated category, and revise the Best Motion Picture Documentary category. The final straw would be if they had the public then just focus on the Guild and BAFTAs before the Oscars. Yeah, and I do see not many people are putting their input on this, which is okay. I mean, like, it's fine. But I guess that does mean that we will go on to our next break. And when we do return, we will go into the grand finale. And when we come back, we will be going back to a major controversy, one of the biggest animation controversies of the year, but coming from a different perspective. Now we will hear from the other creator of Rick and Morty. And now, folks, it is time that we will go and conclude this episode with the grand finale. And with this one, yes, we are going to be returning to the Justin Roiland controversy. Now, I want to go and state this right now. There is no significant update in which we will hear what other form of stupidity that Justin Roiland has done right now. This is actually going to be something in which we will be highlighting from a different perspective. This is actually going to be someone who has decided to go and speak up about the entire situation and address his side of the entire thing. And who I'm talking about is specifically Dan Harmon, the other creator of Rick and Morty. Now, the big thing that happened is that Dan Harmon had a major interview with the Hollywood Reporter in which he decided to call, he didn't decide to call, but the Hollywood Reporter decided to call this interview, Dan Harmon is ready to talk about all of it, including the Justin Roiland drama written by Lacey Rose. And in this article here, it is worth reading, by the way, because it really goes into everything about Dan Harmon, about his time working on Community, his upsides, his downsides, his time working on Rick and Morty, and also about his new animated series on Fox, Crapopolis, which apparently the premiere turned out to be a major hit. Apparently, at least the first episode turned out to be quite successful. Now, I don't know the reception of how the show is. I don't know. I haven't fully seen what people have been saying about it, but so far it is off to a pretty strong start. But the real interesting part about this article, as Dan Harmon really does open up about everything in his life, both professionally and also in the entertainment industry, is that he would also talk about his time with Justin Roiland when working on Rick and Morty. And by the way, this is a pretty big article, as you can see. There's already like a whole bunch. But he would go and discuss about his relationship with Justin Roiland, how it all began, and where did everything fall flat. So, excuse me, folks. But just to go and give you a bit of a quick summary about what has happened or what we have already known, Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, they both met at a festival. Specifically, it is the one that Dan Harmon created called Channel 101, which is like this experimental film festival where he allowed filmmakers to just go crazy, to do whatever they want, and to be as shocking and wild with their content as much as possible. And that is where Harmon met Roiland, and they started to form a bond. And from there they decided, hey, why don't we go and actually work on a special little project together? Why don't we actually go and create a TV show? So they both decided to get together along with a few other filmmakers from Channel 101 in order to go what would eventually become Rick and Morty, since that actually started out as this little spoof cartoon that Roiland created, where he did this parody of Back to the Future with like this satirical version of Marty McFly and Doc Brown, and eventually turned that into what we know today as Rick and Morty. Now, believe it or not, despite what we have heard about Justin Roiland, in the beginning with the first season, Roiland was actually a key player. Like, he was actually doing his job as a he was actually doing his job as a showrunner, that he was heavily involved with the creation of the series, where he was involved with the writing. He was like really into it, not just as like the voices of Rick and Morty, but also like he really was doing his part as a showrunner and as a producer. So from there, they've been working great. They've been working together, and things have been going great. But then things really start to change when Adult Swim was really liking how Rick and Morty was performing. Rick and Morty turned out to be a massive hit, and it all changed when they demanded a season 2. And then from there, Dan Harmon decided to go and take things a little bit more seriously, where he invited his team from Community to be involved with the writing process. And that's where things immediately went south with Justin Roiland, where now the environment has completely changed, and he wasn't enjoying his time in the production of Rick and Morty as much as he used to. In fact, let me just go and read you here in terms of the beginning, or right over here. This is what Dan Harmon had to say, reading from my source on The Hollywood Reporter, as it states, "If anything, what I wanted was for Justin and I to both be able to be increasingly lazy and not show up from work. That was the dream. We'd be these rich ideal men. We could roll around and go like, what if a genie had a butt instead of a dick? And I could be like, yeah, and plus we're going to make people cry about it, and that's going to make them freak out. It's a story about a genie butt dick. But then we'd win an Emmy, and it'd be more ironic than ever. And then I'd come to find out later that it was like, oh, Harmon brought in his Harmon writers, and man, that is not how I saw it." So from there, the tension began to rise up. Like, suddenly the relationship between Harmon and Roiland started to be very strained, as it became less and less like Justin Roiland's show. And by the way, thank you, Space Cowboy, for the subscription right over there. And he even added over here, after the season wrapped, Roiland sat down with Harmon and acknowledged just how miserable he'd become working at the show. The implication, according to Harmon, was that it was his fault. "Honestly, I wasn't sure what he was saying," recalls Harmon, "other than maybe I feel like I'm in your shadow and I wish I wasn't." So from there, the relationship started to be pretty bad as Rick and Morty was slowly morphing into Dan Harmon's show more so than Justin Roiland's show. And that's why we see Justin Roiland's involvement became less and less and less, down to the point when season 3 came in, then his involvement was like next to nothing. Other than just being the voice of Rick and Morty, he had no involvement whatsoever in the producing process, in the writing process, nothing. He is just there to get the credit of being one of the creators of Rick and Morty and to just provide the voices, and that's it, that's all. And in terms of their relationship, it just got worse and worse. And it even brought in over here, in which they have mentioned, at some point in season 3, Roiland simply stopped showing up. A mediator was ultimately brought in, but the exercise went nowhere. I almost felt like Justin wanted everyone to make him feel more comfortable. And I was like, everybody wants to make you comfortable, communicate, and tell us how to do that, says Harmon, who acknowledges, I was freaking out about the whole thing because I wanted the partnership to function. I wanted him happy because when he's happy, we have a hit on our hands. And this eventually just really barreled down where now ultimately things just got worse and worse. Like there was one small moment in which after season 3, they were they like that spark magically came back after Adult Swim demanded like an extra 70 episodes, but even after that it didn't really work out. And he even mentioned about the last time that he ever talked to Justin Roiland, in which he said over here, the last time he and Roiland spoke was over text in 2019, a conversation that left Harmon in tears. He said things that he never said before about being unhappy. And I remember saying to him that the last time we spoke in person, like, I am worried about you and I don't know what to do I don't know what to do about that except to give you all the strings and also just say, I'm scared that you're not going to come back. But then this conversation became unpredictably confrontational. Harmon stops himself there. I think that's as far as I get to take the story. At that point, we're no longer both there for it, and it starts to become not only unfair for me to continue, but totally uncomfortable because from there, a friendship goes away, and I still don't fully understand why. Now, from there, they were able to go and move on. Things were becoming okay. Things were going fine, and especially when Adult Swim did find a brand new showrunner with Scott Marder, who actually is a key player and did help continue to make Rick and Morty a major hit, like to continue to the spirit. To continue the spirit of Rick and Morty and making sure the episodes are still as strong as they can be. So in a way, they did manage to go and find another Justin Roiland, but someone who would be more competent. But then there was the controversy itself. When at the beginning of the year, suddenly we hear about the domestic abuse charges and like the drama really started to kick in relation to Justin Roiland, in which it says over here, on January 12th, NBC News reported that Roiland had been charged with a felony domestic violence in connection with a 2020 incident, which sent everyone involved with the show, many of whom have never actually met Roiland, into a tailspin. Roiland was later cleared of the charges due to insufficient evidence, but Adult Swim have already severed ties with him. When Rick and Morty returns for its 7th season, October 15th, it will do so without Roiland's voice. They hired 2 young, unknown voice actors for the roles of Rick and Morty, a process that Harmon says he largely avoided, mostly out of denial. It's all just sad because the goal is for it to be indistinguishable, he says. At the same time, it would be absurd to suddenly decide that the entire foundation of your creative project was, coincidentally, unimportant. But then suddenly, his attitude towards Justin Roiland completely changed when the recent report from NBC News came out in regards to all the allegations against Justin Roiland, and those in which, like, legally they are allegations, but my God, they got some massive credibility, especially with the fact that the 11 people provided tons of receipts and tons of evidence and tons of text messages to show the predatory nature of Justin Roiland. So let me just go and read this off as well. A few days after the author's time with Harmon, the same outlet published a new report featuring 9 separate accounts of Roiland's alleged misconducts, which range from sexual harassment to sexual assault. To lure these women, Roiland who has denied the allegations, reportedly leveraged his affiliation with the show and its success on social media apps and on dating apps. When Harmon and I connected again, more than a week later, he's read the piece and he can no longer stay quiet. The easiest thing for me to say about Justin has been nothing. Easy because he isolated so well, and easy because I'm nobody's first choice as a judge on anything or anyone. This is where I love to change the subject to myself, to what a piece of crap I've been my whole public life. I would feel so safe and comfortable making this about me, but that trick is worthless here and dangerous to others. It's other people's safety and comfort that got damaged while I observed over a cartoon's quality. Trust has now been violated between countless people and a show designed to please them. I'm frustrated, ashamed, and heartbroken that a lot of hard work, joy, and passion can be leveraged to exploit and harm strangers. So at that point, I think it is safe to say that Roiland's connection with Harmon is pretty much over. That because of the article and because of all the credible allegations that went against Justin Roiland, with the way that he uses his fame to be predatory towards girls, some of which had been said to be underage, Dan Harmon has no longer any respect towards Justin Roiland. But overall, may I say that it's honestly something that I feel like is very much worth highlighting, because it really does highlight a tragic story. This is something that I feel like it's rather pretty sad when you see it in the lens of Dan Harmon, because overall, when you think about the inception of Rick and Morty, it is meant to be like it's meant to be like this symbol of friendship between Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon. But then after the success of the first series, suddenly everything changed. That's when Dan Harmon ultimately decided, okay, let's go and take this show seriously. And honestly, I'm just going to say, in my opinion, I don't blame Dan Harmon for the choices that he actually made. Yes, it may have gone against Justin Roiland's wishes, but Dan Harmon just wants to do what is best for the show. He wants to do, he's doing what you should be doing when you are faced with a successful series. And when you got something successful, you want to go and really maintain that success. You really want to go and make that thing grow and want to ensure, you want to wish the best for that series. So I understand where he is coming from. But from there, he realized that with his focus on Rick and Morty, he's also ruining a friendship that he had with Justin Roiland, which then began the downward spiral of Roiland, where he's no longer that interested in being involved with Rick and Morty, because that little spark that they had right at the beginning was pretty much gone. It's no longer that same fun-filled, wacky times to go and create this insane show. It suddenly became something completely different, where yes, some people could say that Justin Roiland is the creator of the concept of Rick and Morty, but Dan Harmon is the man to be credited with the success of Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty would not be where it is today in terms of its placement in animation history if it weren't for Dan Harmon in the first place. And from there, it really does suck to see how this friendship pretty much got shattered, where the success of Rick and Morty ended up really getting the best of them. But still, though, I would, I would argue that Dan Harmon is not necessarily in the wrong in this. Again, he's just doing what is best for the series and to go and help it to try to go and grow it to become more successful. Justin, on the other hand, he's mostly been behaving like a brat. And I mean, this is a guy whom you can argue never really had like a major success, or like he wasn't, you know, he never really had like a big name popular show of his own, in contrast to Dan Harmon, where he has seen success previously by creating series like Community and stuff like that. But with Justin Roiland, the fact that like he's not willing to go and take the job seriously, the fact that he doesn't want to be a key player to help like nurture the success of Rick and Morty, like that's his own fault. And not to mention the fact that like, even though there is that element of tragedy where where the friendship was pretty much broken of Rick and Morty, and that, you know, with Dan Harmon, he does feel sad with how Rick and Morty like is right now, where like, you know, like any placement or like any involvement of Justin Roiland has pretty much been erased to the point where like it is now 100% no longer his series, even to the point where now they have hired 2 brand new actors, in which I just gotta say, like, holy crap, whoever they are, Adult Swim pretty much hired the perfect people, because these really are voices in which if you didn't say that Justin Roiland was replaced, I wouldn't have known. Like, they really got like perfect impersonators of Rick and Morty. But still, though, like, even with all that happening, that still doesn't necessarily excuse the behavior of what Justin allegedly did, that he would go and use his fame in order to go and lure women, that he was being a predator with it. And that is something that he could not have changed. And I would argue that even if Justin would be more of a key player on Rick and Morty, his fate would still be doomed regardless, because of how he would go and handle his fame. And because of that, like, whatever, like, even though it was kind of a tragedy of what happened, that the friendship was pretty much shattered, now there's like no going back right now. Like, and you could tell that Dan Harmon is absolutely on the side of these of the victims over here, especially like not just because of like what they said Justin Roiland did was just dangerous and like extremely damaging, but it's also the fact that the fame of, like, he uses his fame of Rick and Morty, that really the purpose of Rick and Morty for Justin Roiland is to go and get laid, that he just uses it as a tool in order to go and hopefully have sex. You know, that's the thing that really is heartbreaking. So yeah, that's why I wanted to go and talk about it and to really highlight this part of the controversy, because yeah, there is that other side where it is kind of heartbreaking. It is pretty tragic, where technically Rick and Morty started out as a project between 2 friends who just want to go and goof off and have some crazy ideas. But then over time, it started to become way bigger than what they could ever imagine. And when it was time to actually take it seriously as a show, suddenly that original vision, not only did it drift away, but also the friendship between those 2 just eventually drifted away as well, where it's no longer a show made by Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon. It really is just Dan Harmon's show. And that, with the exception of season 1, it really is Dan Harmon's series through and through. And as long as it continues, it will still be Dan Harmon's show, that there really is just one creator. You know, like I said before, you know, Justin Roiland may have created the concept of Rick and Morty, but Dan Harmon is the one responsible for creating the success of Rick and Morty. And that is a significant difference right there. All right, so with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and now I want to ask you all, how do you feel about Dan Harmon's side of the Justin Roiland controversy? I would love to know what you think on the matter, because, you know, like, I know I've already said my piece, but now I want to hear some other opinions on this. Okay, let's see now. Thank you for saving this story for last. I feel like I need a shower whenever I hear about Justin Roiland. I heard that Dan Harmon has a few horror stories of his own, but nowhere near as bad as Justin Roiland. I'm glad he is cutting that piece of human garbage out of his life. I can only imagine how it feels to have a collaborator and a friend turn out to be a monster. I'm also surprised that Krapopolis is doing so well, considering the baggage attached to it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's at the point where like Fox, like considering now that NFTs have pretty much become worthless through and through, I think like Fox is doing everything they can to make people forget that there was once a massive affiliation with NFTs when it comes to Krapopolis. I mean, it's doing well now, but we'll see how the future goes, if that means like we will be seeing like a season 2 or 3 of Krapopolis, and if it's going to be another major show for Fox. Let's see now. This honestly feels like a tragic tale. The fact that Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland were so close, especially during the early days of Rick and Morty, and it just feels like Roiland just stabbed him in the back and completely destroyed his friendship with him, and makes it feel sorry for Dan Harmon. And I feel sorry for Dan Harmon and hope he can move past that. Yeah, I get, like, honestly, even though like Dan Harmon has been on the right on this entire Rick and Morty situation, I could see how he could feel guilty, like especially with the fact that like this is a matter of like friendship, and you know, like when you're good buds with someone for years and then suddenly that thing is ruined, there is going to be a part of you where you will feel guilty and you'll feel like a part of it is your fault. But then again, considering the amount of trouble that Justin Roiland is in right now, you can only blame yourself for like so much. There are some things that Dan Harmon could say, like he may take the blame on that, but there are other aspects where you gotta say like, no, that's just purely Justin Roiland right there. Let's see. Okay, one hand, I do understand Roiland disassociating from Rick and Morty producing because he felt like the show wasn't his anymore. But at the same time, that doesn't excuse his creepy behavior. Even ignoring the creep aspects of Roiland, he still ignored his job and didn't want to do anything because he wasn't into the show. Taking part in a team project relies on everyone working together and being invested on how things will turn out. I'm glad Harmon has been able to look back. Yeah, exactly. Let's see now. What else is there? I don't think I've read this one. I feel so sorry for Dan Harmon. That is the kind of toxic relationship you need to get out of as soon as possible. I'm just so sorry that this is where the success of Rick and Morty has led to. Roiland legit admitted that he wanted to make a show just so that he wouldn't have to work for a thing in his life. That should be enough to destroy any and all credibility, not only as a big name behind the show, but also anything he would have to say to dismiss the allegations against him. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, that is his biggest downfall. That is the biggest reason why I guess some people could say Justin Roiland is canceled. It's not necessarily the allegations from the women and non-binary people. It's not necessarily the charges that was against him. It's the fact that he was doing nothing with his shows, and that he was carrying that toxic trait also onto his other shows like Solar Opposites. It was the same thing. He was also doing nothing during that time as well. So I think that is also another thing that is worth noting about. Like, that's also another aspect you got to keep in mind with Justin Roiland, is that yeah, like, okay, like maybe there could be like an understandable excuse with Rick and Morty, but like, why would he do nothing with Solar Opposites? Like that's also another question that needs to be brought up. This story just makes me feel so sorry for Dan Harmon. For him, I feel so much sorrow and pain. Must have meant his friendship with Roiland was very strong, and that it was beyond bonding over the creation of Rick and Morty. So for him to see Roiland turn out to be such a horrible person must have broken his heart into several pieces. I'm just glad that Harmon was able to see that it was over and that he separated himself from Roiland once and for all. Oh, absolutely, man. See, this is exactly why that I feel like this is worth talking about. Like, that's why I feel like it is worth looking into, like, other perspectives. All right, I'm going to read one more before we go and cap off this episode. it's really sad and heartbreaking to hear those types of friendship breakup stories. In Dan Harmon's case, I can understand why he wasn't, why he just wants Rick and Morty to be fun. He deserves a much better friend than Justin Roiland. Friends never deserve to have predators as their allies. I felt really sorry for Dan. I hope he's doing okay with other shows without him. Yeah. Honestly, like, I'm sure, like, he'll still need time to emotionally recover from all that, but I'm sure Dan Harmon is going to be okay. With that said, now that should do it for this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Thank you all so much for joining me on all this, and hopefully next week we will have more crazy episodes and more crazy stories to go and discuss. So with that said, I would like to say that if you like to go and follow more crazy adventures on AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast to hear more of these wacky tales going on in the entertainment industry and beyond, then all you have to do is subscribe to the AniMat Live Twitch channel and to the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to go and follow me on whatever podcast service you're listening to, whether it be on TikTok. Don't forget to follow me on whatever podcast service, whether it be Spotify, Google, Amazon, iTunes, and more. So with that said and done, I would like to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes.